Keidi, this is your
New book just came out. I just received it just this morning. Knocked on opened my front door, and it was there waiting on me on the porch.
nice. So, what is this book telling us?
It tells us what causes cancer, gives us a whole bunch of list of different influences of what causes cancer, including the research of I put in three mainstream cancer researchers. I did reviews of their work. One was Dr. Otto Warburg, who won a Nobel Prize in 1930s for giving us the cause of cancer, which was a mutation on the cellular level so that the cell never depends on oxygen, or it doesn't depend on oxygen for supplying its energy. It goes to fermentation, and that fermentation, called a prokaryote, is what causes that cell to become mutant. I also included Dr. Joseph Issels, who was a now noted 21st century German researcher into what causes cancer. He was the one who treated Bob Marley at Bob Marley's death. And also I included in it Dr. Max Gerson, who treated it with natural therapies and was said to have a remarkable rate of recovery. So this book, A Year Against Cancer, is all about the numerous ways that we can develop cancer. We talk about carcinogens. I have an extensive glossary in the book because it's a language that most of us are unfamiliar with. And then, so I talk about the herbs that combat cancer, the foods that combat cancer. I talk about the herbs, foods, and the supplements that combat cancer. We talk about cannabinoids, and how they're used now in the fight against cancer. I have lots and lots and lots of these lists of things in here: herbs, supplements, not cucumbers, supplements, and all kind of things. And then specific vegetables. We talk about cancer and nutrition. It's got a lot of information in it. And I contend if a person gets this book and follows this book, they should never have to worry about becoming the 4 out of 10 people who will develop cancer at this time. It talks about the earliest appearance of cancer in the world in ancient Egypt, where in ancient Egypt, the proliferation of cancer, or the risk of cancer, was 2 out of every 400 people. Nowadays, in the United States, the risk is 2 out of every 5 people. So we've seen a phenomenal uptake in cancer. And I talk about a whole bunch of different things, the different types of cancers, food processing, and how it's related to cancer. I talk about prescription drugs, how they increase the risk of cancer, including cancer drugs can cause you to have secondary cancers. And when I come to the part of the book that talks about what can cause cancer, I actually list about 31 different exposures that can cause cancer. So it's quite comprehensive book, quite comprehensive, and easy to understand, I contend. The best way to defend against cancer is not to get it. So I contend the ways to prevent cancer are what people need to hear. You got to create an anti-cancer lifestyle. So ultimately, number one, how to create this anti-cancer lifestyle. If cancer has 100 ways to get at you, then you need to know 115 ways to keep it at bay.
With the lifestyle we live, where they are basically poisoning the sources of air, water, and food, how easy is it to do the avoidance?
In my mind, it's very easy. But then again, I wrote the book.
So give me a 3-step or whatever step you want to call it process to say This is going to now be my anti-cancer lifestyle.
Well, 3 steps out of probably about 200 steps listed in the book of how to avoid it.
You
Take
do know 200 steps sounds like a lot of work. So how do you simplify it?
by breaking it down into different areas, such as what to eat or what not to eat to prevent cancer. So, in the chapter on living superfood solutions, I list the top foods associated with cancer. And so, therefore, we know that eating things like milk, like animal fats, especially high animal fats, if we're looking at cancer and nutrition, we have the association with malignancies, tumors, and malnutrition. We could look at foods proven to be effective against cancer. And we have things like celery, selenium, fruits, and vegetables. And we talk about the specifics about each of these fruits and vegetables, such as carrots and colorectal cancer. So the thing about it is people have to understand cancer is a complex disease. It does not come so easily. It is the consequence of a lifetime of exposures to carcinogens. The key to do is to get as many carcinogens out of our lives as possible. If a person doesn't want to do 200 different things to prevent cancer, then that's okay because they still have a 3 out of 5 chance that they will not get cancer. But if a person absolutely does not want to get cancer, they're going to have to realize cancer is essentially a modern disease. And we're going to have to go back to the other side of modern to prevent cancer. Because quite simply, cancer only affecting 4 out of 5 people or 4 out of 10 people. Cancer is a devastating disease. So if you don't get it, then 2 persons to your left or 2 persons to your right, one of you is going to get, no, 2 of you are going to get cancer. I think doing 200 things to not get cancer, especially when some of them are just so easy, is definitely the way to go.
Okay, let me ask you a question. And in the answer you give me an answer that will not lose the audience of a 5-year-old sitting next to their mum.
Yeah, 5-year-old will not be held responsible for not getting cancer.
No, I don't mean that. I mean,
Mhm.
give me an answer where they themselves could understand it. So by talking to an age group where the 5-year-old will understand, everybody is going to understand. That's the point I'm trying to make. So the question is, what is cancer?
Cancer is a mutation. It is a mutation caused by environmental exposures. These environmental exposures cause cells to grow unchecked, unchecked by the body's natural processes that are to eliminate these cells. So the problem that comes in explaining it to a 5-year-old, it's too complicated. The 5-year-old's mind isn't set up to work in terms of this. It's called the medial prefrontal cortex, which gives us the idea of looking over the horizons, short-term behaviors or modification of behaviors that prevent long-term diseases. And the problem with talking to a 5-year-old about that is that process doesn't kick in until they're 25 years old or so. I can talk this talk to a teenager, and I can tell the teenager, I can show them, demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt that the risk of cancer is going to continue to increase. It's already being predicted that cancer is going to affect 5 out of 5, no, not 5, 5 out of 10 people in our children's lifetime. That will be an increase of 20% over what it is today.
Let me help you. Because based on what you've just said, I want to reiterate it and tell me if I've misunderstood. But essentially, we have healthy cells. We're born with healthy cells, and we living in an environment that is poisoning us. And so our body is going into overdrive to heal us. And in that process of healing us, because it's because it's being overwhelmed in keeping us healthy, it then starts to um, malform itself in a way to deal with the environment. Is that kind of what you said?
Yeah, I'll say yeah, but it was really
Okay.
hard to say yeah. The thing
That's,
is you're dealing with this on a level that I am not dealing with. I'm writing from science perspective.
I understand, but I used to work
And
for a children's hospital, and I noticed that doctors were able to speak to children about what they had, no matter how complicated the situation was, because these were ill children, and the doctor could still tell them something that made them comprehend what they were doing there. Did that make sense? And so,
yeah, that does make sense. Of course, the doctor had a lot of time to practice that. Let me just show you an example of what we're talking about.
okay,
When I have a subchapter or a chapter of the book, chapter 8, called Cancer on a Subcellular Basis. Under the what, where in the cell did this cancer come from, I have a list, and that list is, let me tell you how long that list is. The list is 25 different parts of the cell that all have a common root to the cancer formation. They are apoptosis, autophagy, cell membrane, centrosomes, cytoplasm, cytoskeleton, endoplasmic reticulum, eukaryotes and prokaryotes, which might be closer to the simplest answer that you want, eukaryotes and prokaryotes, exosomes, extracellular matrix, genetic mutations, Golgi apparatus, histones, integrin beta 1 receptor, intracellular parasites, lipid rafts, lysosomes, mitochondria, nucleus, peroxisomes, plasma membrane proteins, PCK iota, signaling molecules, telomeres, and vesicles. Those are 25 different components just of the cell, subcellular component that are related to this cancer.
those 25 things you gave us, are they the doorway to how we get cancer, or were you describing the different types of cancer that the cell is basically being stressed by?
Those would be different types on the subcellular basis by which we would get cancer.
And basically, you're suggesting that because we are getting cancer on the cellular level, that's where it starts, and then starts to proliferate to the point where we then notice it and then become unwell. Is that basically what you're telling us?
I can accept that.
And so, therefore, if we was to able to then fix our body at the subcellular level, we would just fix the whole body. Would that also be true?
No, not necessarily. The thing
Okay.
about it is there are so many different ways that this becomes intrusive in our bodies that we can prevent it from one way and it comes in through another way. If we're looking at what causes cancer, I have a chapter on that. And I mean, I talked about the three different researchers, so I broke it down. Dr. Otto Warburg, who won 2 Nobel Prizes in his life, talks about metabolic reprogramming, talks about oxygen deprivation and fermentation, which is the eukaryotes and prokaryotes argument. And he talks about the therapeutic potential of it and mitochondrial dysfunction.
You did say that the cells have an aerobic type, capacity, and then at some point when they mutate, they take on a fermentative way of surviving.
That's
What
right.
what is that?
That's cancer.
What is that bridge that makes them go from saying I want oxygen to now I want basically, I mean, fermentation is basically alcohol, effectively. So it's gone from I want to have fermented foods as a food source instead of oxygen. What made it cross that bridge and go to the pub internally or to the bar, as you would call it?
Yeah. Internal, the inadequate supply of oxygen, if the cells go on to live while being oxygen deprived, they will mutate and then go into that secondary mutation. So, what is the cause of that?
Yes.
Inadequate oxygen supply.
And
That
what's causing
essentially,
that?
well, that's caused on numerous levels. It could be because a person doesn't exercise enough and
Hmm.
doesn't force enough oxygen into their bloodstream. It could be because the person is incapable of getting the oxygen supply. Um, it's rather complicated.
That's
And
okay. But essentially, you've answered it because obviously oxygen gets into the body through the red blood cells. That's where the
that's correct.
that's oxygen carrying vehicle. From my understanding, is that if you want to have more blood cell carrying vehicles in the body, then you need to tell the body to make some more. And the way to
That's
tell
right.
the body to make some more is to exercise. Do aerobic
It's the
exercise.
exercise,
You go to sleep,
or
and your body says, "Okay, we need more because what you did yesterday was quite stressful. I'm going to now, while you're sleeping, make more red blood carrying oxygen cells, and therefore you now increase your oxygen capacity." So that's why exercise works for us. Is that oversimplifying or is that the answer?
that's a part of the answer, no doubt. That is a part of the answer and that exercise. But then things like you have inadequate breathing. We just, as human beings, we don't exercise. We don't get a chance to stress our bodies and cause us to deep breathe. We don't have to chase our food anymore. Um, so we just kind of coasting through life, which demands less oxygen energy for the body. And so therefore, we naturally are breathing less in our generation than our great great grandparents did in their generation when they had to work harder to produce the food that kept them alive. So
Is
it's
deep
a,
breathing enough, or must you actually exercise to force the body into some to demand more oxygen?
I would say the exercise is probably going to be better because there are other chemicals that come along with that exercise, while deep breathing probably will be good enough to solve the situation. But then again, we can't. This is a situation where we can't take a chance. We might deep breathe throughout our whole life and still get cancer and say, well, I just wasted all my life deep breathing when I should have just been walking.
And you know what's
So
interesting as well, when you observe children, the first thing they want to do once they become, able to walk, they want to just run around and play.
they
And
want to run around and play. That's right.
running around and playing is exercise. And then as we get older, we decide that's too much work. We become sedentary and sit down and watch TV. And
And now we have the extremes from the joy of play when we're a child. We now go to the extreme of the joy of the sedentary lifestyle, sitting around and watching TV. And therefore, we significantly increase the risk of cancer and going that wild swing. That's a good example that you made.
And you know what's really interesting? I remember as a young man, in my 20s, I was an accountant. So all I did was go to work, sit on a chair for 8 hours in front of a computer, press a couple of keys, and then 8 hours later, I'm going home. And I had
Mm-hmm.
to physically go to the gym to give my body the ability to do that very same thing better. In other words, me sitting down on a chair without exercising, my brain was no longer able to function properly. But by exercising, my mental capacity was increased, so I could sit down and do the work, which I thought,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, and luckily for me, when I was young, I was very sporty. So I just carried on
Mm-hmm.
with sports and I loved it. And I knew when I just slowed down because I wasn't exercising. I thought, no, I've got to go to the gym, and I forced myself into the gym every day.
Yeah,
And I
well,
found,
very smart move on your part.
and just by doing that, I was now able to do the sedentary work better.
That's exactly right. See, one thing about the sedentary lifestyle is that it feeds upon itself. The sedentary lifestyle creates less of a desire to break that sedentary lifestyle. And so we actually go deeper into it until finally we become trapped. We just had a couple of people staying here at our home that came in for the healthy wellness retreat that we're doing now. And the one brother came in, he was in bad shape. He was in very bad shape. He was on 19 different medications,
Wow.
including four medications for hypertension. He had a back problem with his back, and he couldn't walk. So when he did come out, he had to walk with a cane and then had to take a stroller through the airport and everything. He was in real bad shape. But the thing about it is he put his mind to it and got into it. He stayed 2 weeks. The first brother stayed 1 week, and both of them went home on half their medications or less, and just really, really had a good outlook of coming to terms with their health. The one brother was diabetic as well, and so that was quite a problem. He had some severe problems, but we sent him back home with a new attitude. They both going back home as vegans, not even aware of why they would not want to eat meat in the first place when they came out. Now they go back home knowing I have to go vegetarian. There's nothing else that created such a revival of the body. And the one brother who was on the medications and everything, he went back home 15 pounds lighter in about 13 or 14 days, about 17 pounds lighter, and on half the drugs, including half of his diabetes medication. He was on two different diabetes injections. It was unbelievable. It was a
Wow.
turnaround. I wish I could have had him for a little bit longer, but we had him for long enough that they do know now what to do. Now the key becomes, can they maintain it? And that's where the Health and Wellness Network comes in, because one of the things I intend to do with this Health and Wellness Network is to create a maintenance course where a person can be with us every week and just pay a maintenance fee and, spend an hour or two on the weekends maintaining what we are able to accomplish.
It reminds me actually, there was a time when I found myself feeling very, very lethargic and tired. And a friend of
Mm-hmm.
mine said to me, come and stay with me for the weekend, really for a few days. So I went there on, I think, the Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
and they said to me, I want you to only eat what I give you and nothing else. I said, cool, I can do that. And
Mm-hmm.
so they gave me basically green juices and fruit juices and some soups, and that was it. And at first, I'm thinking, this is not enough food. But then again, I thought, you know what? I did say I would just go with the flow. And Keidi, I can tell you this. I should have gone home on the Sunday. I ended up leaving on the Monday because I
Mm-hmm.
realized I was being healed just by being there and eating and
Mm-hmm.
we're exercising and obviously eating. And I was being healed. And I thought to myself,
That's right.
that is really quite profound. I didn't expect, and it wasn't even like you must do this, you must do this, you must do this. It was a case of we were just have spending time and then talking whatever we're doing, and then the meal. We had the meal, and then we done exercise and we did whatever we did. But it wasn't even something I thought about. I was just going through. I was just going with the flow. So it made me think: could we have a restaurant that you just go to? And they say, your name is John, your name is Michael, and they just give you what you're supposed to eat. And you just turn up
That's right.
like a petrol station or gas station, as you call it over there. And you just turn up,
Mm-hmm.
they give you the food you're supposed to go have, you go home. but then in
That's right.
eating from them, they're healing you.
That's right. That's what we can do. We can do it, and we should go ahead and commit to it just to do it.
Could you imagine that restaurant?
Oh yeah, I used to run a restaurant just like that. The only thing is it was just too much work at the time, and I only did it for 2 months, but I proved in 2 months that I could create a dynamic menu that would, turn over at a certain point, and that was what I went in to prove, and had a great time. We used to have Stevie Wonder used to come through there and eat, and a
Wow.
number of other celebrities come through as well.
PD, I would like you to keep the idea as an idea in your head. So when we go forward to next year, when we are hopefully running our African future model, I'd like you to resurrect the idea again because I've experienced it and I know
Hmm.
it's so much fun being
Yeah.
being healed without even doing anything other than just turn up and eat what they give you. Do you know what I mean? And it's almost
Oh
like
yeah.
you haven't even got to choose anything. They just give you the food, and then you eat and then go. And yeah, it makes me
Yeah, it
wonder.
will work. It will work. Now, I tell you one thing, it is exhausting. And I'm not going to do it again alone like that.
Were
It's
you alone yourself?
exhausting.
Were you by
Oh
yourself?
yeah, yeah. And I was preparing up to like 30 dishes a day.
Yeah, no restaurant runs with one person.
No, it
That's
doesn't.
not how they work. And I'm
Yeah,
also
you're
thinking to
absolutely
myself,
right.
you could have a subscription model where they just pay a subscription and just turn up and eat. They don't even pay you
Hmm.
at the point of eating. They just turn up, eat, and go. And you've got a subscription model. And based on
Hmm.
that, you've got, permanent cash flow, but at the same time, you can then employ people and make it work. But then you might even have to subsidize it. So who knows? But it's an interesting model. And I like the idea of it because you could literally heal people just by having that kind of idea set up somewhere.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt, no doubt. So we're doing the best we can to do the best we can. I got these 7 brand new books. Oops, you can't see. 7 new books since
Go read them
December.
out for the audience. Read them out for the audience.
Okay, there is A Year Against Cancer
Hmm.
with Living Superfood Solutions is the latest one. Before that, Standard Omission, Greek, the African scientific roots of Greco-Roman medicine. I have Quantum Advancement, which is all about spectacular discoveries along our magnificent journey towards this future quantum advancement. I have the African future entitled Empowering a United and Prospering Africa for Future Generations. I have the stem cell revolution. I got quite excited about that one. The stem cell revolution, which is all about a holistic approach to stem cell activation and regenerative medicine. Disaster preparedness for World Wars V and VI. Bear with me here as I try and get this to show up. Disaster preparedness, and then the
Before you
first of
before
the
you run away
seven.
from that one, before you run away, say why that's relevant. What kind of
Why
preparation
it's
are we looking
relevant?
at? Are we doing
Um,
food prepping? Are we storing food? What exactly are you encouraging in that book?
Well, in this book, I'm encouraging survival. This book is about survival, disaster preparedness. A disaster is upon the world. We're
Hmm.
seeing it in stages, but we're not seeing it all in context. I try and put the ongoing disaster, the corporations against the workers' middle class, and the ongoing disaster of a new global war between BRICS and NATO is real possibilities. So I want my people to be prepared for that. And then,
Okay.
of course, you have the book Living Superfood Solutions, um, dietary guides to preventing and reversing chronic diseases. And believe it or not, I have another book ready to come out in about a week.
Can you tell us the title?
Suicide, the book. You got a chance to see Suicide, the movie, am I correct?
I did.
Yeah, well, this one is now Suicide, the book.
And True Sight, the movie, was your movie?
Yeah, that was my documentary film.
Okay. I just want to share that so that they know that you're the architect for that particular documentary. Nice.
I really enjoyed it, but it's expensive. Making documentary films is very expensive. So I am going to right now go back into Suicide the book, and then maybe come back and do either redo Suicide the movie or do it up the way it needs to be done.
I'm sure you know this already, but a long time ago, I was involved in film financing. Yeah. And I because I'm living in England, Hollywood is not where I got a lot of exposure to. But because I was associated with a number of Indian people in the UK, I got exposed to Bollywood financing and film financing. And I brought a number of innovations to their model, their film financing model, which obviously, they adopted quite readily because it improved their way of basically getting financing to to kind of almost like become like a conveyor belt. But what I found interesting about that is I told myself that in the future, whenever that future happens to land, I am going to actually start to fund stories which are our stories. And I know what it costs to make movies, so it's not like it's going to be a simple thing. It won't be a simple thing, but I did think to myself, I've got to figure out a finance model that enables it to happen, so that even if the film is a flop, you don't bankrupt yourself in the process. Because and I know how Hollywood de-risks the movie making business because they do have flops in Hollywood and they still can keep it going because they've got a de-risk model. India is not it wasn't as sophisticated as Hollywood when I was involved with those guys, but I do understand the model. And it did occur to me to, you know, help a number of filmmakers in our demographic to kind of put them on a almost like a finance conveyor belt where money just keeps on coming and all they got to do is just get the scripts ready and get the team and the cast and crew ready. And in fact, I'm sure um, Tyler Perry has that kind of model because he's got a studio, and the studio itself is an overhead, so he has to keep churning stuff through that model. So I'm sure he's got the finance model sorted out to make that happen as well. But it did occur to me now today. I watched a movie called Sinners, Michael B. Jordan, and the director of Black Panther, whose name won't come to mind right now. And I was watching the movie, and it did occur to me that, and by the way, I was in a cinema that was nearly empty. Okay. And it did occur to me that if we're going to play this game of making movies and it kind of not being profitable initially, we've got to figure out how to, you know, play the distribution game so that it does benefit us, and that's really marketing. And also, we've got to figure out how to make it work so that you don't go bankrupt in the process. So you either spend about a smaller but have a smaller budget, but the quality is still there. But at the same time, you want to also make sure that the demand to see the movie is also there in place. Otherwise, it becomes very, very expensive project, and you don't really want to have expensive projects that then again bankrupts you. There's no point going down that road. But it has occurred to me that I can figure out how to create that conveyor belt of money. I can figure it out. And so watching the movie today, it reinvigorated my enthusiasm to see if I can, put some mental energy into, creating a conveyor belt of money where the investors don't end up losing. Because if you bankrupt investors, obviously the whole model doesn't work. And so And I
Awesome.
was re-inspired today by that. Now, the movie itself, I need to go watch it again because I wasn't kind of, I thought it was different, but I'd want to tell a different story. I want to tell
Mm-hmm.
stories where when you come out of there, you just come out of there feeling, okay, let me go step into my greatness. Let me go
Mm-hmm.
where, be the best version of me. Let me go step up.
That's right.
That's the kind
Wasn't
of
that movie about a supernatural?
So what we had was the character. So you had two twins. Michael B. Jordan. I don't know if he was acting both parts, but Michael B. Jordan had a twin, and essentially they were setting up basically a nightclub, effectively in the like 100 years ago. So some kind of blues bar where they're playing blues music, and it was like a dance club or a dance environment, a drink, a drink and dancing bar. And then you had a number of characters who would have represented the pernicious um, South energy, the Ku Klux Klan kind of energy. So that kind of pernicious, we wanna ruin what you've got because we don't want you guys succeeding. And that energy of just being mean spirited. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, we see you doing something positive, but we're gonna mess up anyway. There was that energy
Mm-hmm.
there. And so you had a number of characters playing that part, but they were the vampires. So the vampires who just came into it and ruining things, they were like vampires. And they literally came in and turned you know when a vampire bites you, you become a vampire. And so they end up turning the whole village or the whole town into vampires. So it's a really weird energy. And they were after one particular person, and because this one person was a cousin of the brothers who then they got themselves bitten in the process, there was some kind of promise that they would say, look, let this cousin of ours who's got talent, let's leave him alone, let him fulfill his purpose on earth. But when he gets older, we'll bite him.
When
Don't
you're
tell
ready
me
to
what's
get back into filmmaking, you let me know. I'll be there.
I don't want to be the producer or the director because I want to go there. I want to be maybe the producer, but I want to basically just be in the financing model, just to kind of get the conveyor belt model working.
Mm-hmm.
I want to put energy into that, but that'll come later. Obviously, once we've done a few other things we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to your seven book presentation just now. If we want to get those books, and we want to get maybe all of them or some of them, how do we do it?
Keidi, Keidi dot biz/CRP 2012.
Okay, you take care of yourself, and we'll catch up next week.
Hey, talk to you then. Peace
Take
now.
care. Bye now.